let's watch.
Declared it wants peaceful relations with other countries in its first news conference since taking control
Taliban
in
did a news
Afghanistan.
conference, boys.
The group has been keen to show a new face to the world, pledging inclusion and education for women and religious tolerance. The group insists it will offer amnesty to anyone who works with
religious tolerance,
the government or foreign forces. But reports of Taliban rule in cities captured during the group's advance have raised fears about these promises.
We have pardoned anyone, all those who had fought against us. We don't want a repeat of war. We want to do away with the factors of conflict. So the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan does not have any conflict with anybody. We want the fighting to end. The Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan is committed to the rights of women within the framework of Sharia. Our women have the same rights. They can work in different sectors on the basis of our rules and regulations, in education and health and other areas. They are going to be working shoulder to shoulder with us. We want to assure the international community there will be no discrimination against women, but of course within our religious framework.
Well, let's go live now.
You should just be like, we're going to be like Saudi Arabia and then move on. You know what I mean? Like, except they don't have nukes. Or well, Pakistan is what I was thinking when I said that. Except they're not, you know, a important asset or an ally to the United States yet. I've talked about my suspicions and what my speculation is many times over the past couple of days, but I do think that the reason for why the United States did this, once again, is because it was inevitable. It could have happened now. It could have happened 10 years down the line. It could have happened 20 years down the line. It doesn't fucking matter. It was inevitable that it was going to happen, that the Taliban was going to overtake because they were too fucking powerful. So what I suspect is that they probably were like, here, we'll give you stability. You give us mining contracts and don't give it to China, even though the Taliban have met with China as well. So we'll see what happens.
To Kabul, where we can speak with our correspondent Rob McBride. Rob, you were watching that news conference start to finish. How would you summarise it?
I think it was as we expected. You know, we've seen it's not quite a charm offensive, but you know, after all of the military offensive of the recent weeks, it is certainly the Taliban trying to reassure the international community and also Afghans themselves that this is going to be a different type of regime, a different type of government, a softer side, if you like, more respectful and inclusive. All of these key words we've tended to hear in the last week or two. And now we hear it in this first official news conference. It is very important. This is almost like the keynote address, I guess, for this new government. It's been long anticipated. It was meant to take place. We heard talk that it could have taken place yesterday, Monday. It got delayed, and now we have it. So this is important. Interestingly, right at the end there, we have heard that this will become...
All bullshit is leading up to the U.S. withdrawing this year. The Taliban went back to bomb Afghan civilians left and right. Yeah.
Seems a regular feature. There will be news conferences on a regular basis moving forward, rather like the...
But before they didn't have, but it wasn't their government, and now it is.
Kind of international community, the Western liberal sort of countries that it seems this news conference was aimed at. You did get the sense that although we were addressing issues that are very important here in Afghanistan and to all the Afghan journalists who were there in this news conference, it
what
was
a weird situation. Those are literally murderers and head choppers we're watching here. Dude, what are you talking about? Like, of course, that's how this works, dude. What, you think when like a member of fucking Congress gives a speech in the United States of America, if they're like a fucking veteran that toured, like, you think they haven't murdered people? Like, are you crazy? It's literally like, from the point of view of the fucking Pashtun, that's the same shit. Do you understand that? Like, I'm not assigning a morality to it. You're basically describing every government, though. You know what I mean? Yeah, you never say that when we're showing U.S. troops, though. mean, that's a stretch, dude. Why is that a stretch? How is that a stretch? The main difference between this fucking dude and, like, I don't know, a Western version of this dude is that the Western version of this dude is probably, one, not as brutal, okay, let's be real, and two, not as, like, religious. Even if they are religious, they're not, they're nowhere near as, like, lost in the sauce as a fucking fundamentalist, like, Wahhabist dude like this, okay? That's the main difference. What do you think, like, when America sends fucking troops over to Afghanistan, they're sending them over there to play patty cakes? Is that what you think our troops are doing out there? Like, what do you think veterans do? Why do you think they're so fucked up when they come back, dude? Why? Because they're like, oh man, I lost the game of tic-tac-toe, dude. It was so fucked up. No, they do the same shit. They fucking murder.
Was very mindful of what the world watching would think about this new government. And the Taliban comes into power here really with something of a hill to climb. You have a very skeptical international audience looking at this organization, given all of the history that we know about going back 20 years. It has unexpectedly, in many respects, suddenly found itself inheriting this country. And
Did you know that Mullah Omar hung a warlord on a tank gun barrel for sexually assaulting children and chopped the heads off of warlords in order to stop the sale of opium? Okay, but then Mullah Omar is also, like, fucking totally fine with 12-year-old and 14-year-old girls getting fucking raped and being sold off to families for marriages. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm not gonna sit here and be like, that's a good guy. He's not a good guy. None of these dudes are good guys. Okay, that's crazy.
There is an extreme skepticism from the international community about the way the Taliban conducted itself, for example, during these negotiations, that as part of the agreement, as part of the process, it was meant to enter into.
Just like how you have to say you don't like the Taliban so often because it shows you understand. Someone could assume you are pro-Taliban. Yeah, no, I know, because Americans are conditioned through a healthy fucking diet of, like, pro-imperialist propaganda, which is the exclusive fucking position that mainstream media takes, to assume that, like, anyone who fucking turns around and, like, ever goes against that narrative unconditionally, it says, no, that's fucking bullshit, is seen as an enemy combatant. I'm doing, like, fucking, you know, fifth column shit here, you know? I'm like a secret Islamic operative amongst the ranks, and I'm actually, you know, with the enemy. It's just the reality, unfortunately. That's how people are conditioned into thinking and feeling. So that's precisely why I have to constantly fucking, you know, repeat myself.
Negotiations with the what is now the defunct government that has just collapsed, but it was meant to negotiate with that government, and there is skepticism that it was playing for time, that it was acting in bad faith. All of those things, obviously, which the Taliban denies, and it blames the other side. It blames.
You were born in New Jersey, bro. Lol. I know, but explain that to a fucking dumbass. You know. And also, you can be fucking fifth column and be born behind enemy lines, you know, or within our ranks or whatever.
The outgoing government for acting in bad faith and for bringing about the crisis that resulted in its downcoming. So all of this did seem to be aimed at trying to convince the overseas audience. And you got a lot of that. It did address some of those issues, particularly that the international community is concerned about. One thing we didn't mention earlier was that the fact that never again would Afghanistan would allow Afghanistan land or soil material to be used for the training of groups of fighters who would threaten those countries overseas. That was one of the big concerns that obviously led to the intervention of 20 years ago. So there was that guarantee. Then specifically, there was the guarantee in answer to one of the questions to the people who are just a kilometre or two away from here, clamouring to get into the international airport. And as we were listening to the news conference, we hear occasionally gunshots ring out, sometimes the odd single shot, sometimes automatic gunfire as Taliban guards and fighters who have a cordon around the terminal try to keep people back. It is a reminder of, it gives you the context of what's happening here. But there was the assurance for all of those people that there is no need to run, that there is a guarantee that there will not be...
Do you believe the Taliban have a more valid cause than many conservatives of the West? What? No, dude. They're fucking psychos. No, their cause is bullshit, dude. What the fuck? The people that say yes are annoying, delusional internet... annoying, delusional internet anti-imperialists that, like, literally are just anti-America. And they think that that's, like... They think that that is, like, the proper position to take in every single instance. And they're not even relevant enough to fucking address. And what I mean by that is, like, they are oftentimes correct, like 90% of the time, because, like, being anti-America, America being the hegemonic power, okay, lands you in the correct position more often than not, like in the overwhelming majority of cases. But then there are fucking instances like the Taliban, and you're like, I'm anti-America, so I'm pro-Taliban. You're like fucking psychotic, dude. No, dude, I don't think a bunch of goddamn, like, psychopaths who only know how to fucking shoot AK-47s and have been reading the fucking Quran or whatever and don't even know what it actually says in the Quran in a bastardized interpretation from a fucking Pakistani madrasa, and then, like, they move over and live in a fucking cave their entire lives, like shooting at American soldiers, are going to have the best possible way of governing an entire multi-ethnic, incredibly complex fucking region. Okay? That's a psychotic approach. Like, think about it. There's a lot of conservative values in the Middle East to begin with. These guys are like, holy shit, they are more conservative than the other fucking dudes who are already pretty goddamn conservative. Hankies don't support the Taliban, chat? No, it's like fucking the Brazilian Trotskyites or some shit, and like one Italian Marxist-Leninist group said that they were offering support to the Taliban. It doesn't really matter. It's like completely insignificant.
Reprisals or grudges or a knock on the door or interrogations, as they put it. The people who are there can go home. There will not be any recriminations. It remains to be seen whether the people who are in fear this Tuesday evening that they are going to be targeted, whether they will believe that or not. But certainly that was the message that the Taliban wanted to get across with this news conference.
OK, Rob McBride there reporting live for us from Kabul. Rob, thank you. The head of the Taliban's political office in Qatar's capital, Doha, is heading back to Afghanistan. Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar led the group's negotiations in peace talks with the US and Afghan governments. He departed after meeting Qatar's foreign minister earlier today. Talks between the Taliban and former Afghan officials will now be held domestically instead of in Doha. Let's bring in Haroon Rahimi. He's the an assistant professor of law at the American University of Afghanistan and joins us by Skype from Istanbul. It's good to have you with us again. It's quite significant, is it not, that Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar is heading back to Afghanistan. Does this give any indication, do you think, of who's going to be making up the government, what kind of government we're going to see, especially now that the top people are basing themselves in the capital of the country they have just seized?
So let's just be clear that he's not the top person in the Taliban movement, Mullah Baradar. He's been the head of the political office in Doha, but they have a system of leadership where the leadership council is at the head, And Mullah Brother has generally been acting as the face, the political office. You can compare him to kind of a Ministry of Foreign Affairs in a sense. But the head of the military committee and the head of the leadership committee are two different people. In terms of what kind of government we can expect now, given the developments we've observed so far, I had hoped, and the hope had been, that there will be an interim government that is neutral. That hope was lost when Ghani escaped.
You have a very Orientalist perception of Pakistan. It's actually a very diverse and heterogeneous country. Some areas are exploited by extremists for political gain, but it's not the Taliban land you have it painted as. You should visit one day. No, I don't think that it's Taliban land at all. So I apologize if that's how it came across. But when you talk about like the ISI or the Pakistani intelligence service, the Pakistani intelligence service operates in collaboration, in coordination with the CIA, and are literally funding the same kind of extremist militants all the goddamn time. So that's unfortunately the truth. It's unfortunately the fucking reality of the circumstance. So to avoid that reality would be delusional. To not mention that would be delusional.
Escaped Kabul, and Taliban said that they had to step in to fill the vacuum. They could not just wait until an interim government, and they could not wait for an interim government to take over from Ghani, and then a new government will be formed under the supervision of an interim government. That is not the case. Now Taliban are, for all intents and purposes, in charge, and they will be controlling the process through which a new government will be formed. This means that we will be having a Taliban-controlled process through which an inclusive government will be formed. Taliban are pretty much holding all cards. There are two considerations that may kind of point towards.
My take is a radical one and a brutal one. To be honest, in my opinion, we should leave Afghanistan alone, and everyone who wants to come with us should or flee should stay. Make them fight for it. Dude, I burned your house, okay? And then when you opened up your hands and you said, please help me, I literally lit more fucking fires in your house. And if you don't want to burn alive in your house that I've literally burned, then you're a fucking coward. It's easy for you to say Gaming Crusader 69, dude. Your own personal Karengal Valley, like I have repeated time and time again, is when mommy makes her hot pocky and the fucking middle part is cold. So shut the fuck up.
A more inclusive system. One is international legitimacy. It is something that is important to the Taliban. It is one of the things they care about. They care about many things that some often may come in tension with their desire to have international legitimacy. We'll have to see how trade-offs will work out. The second issue, the consideration that may point towards possible more inclusive government, even despite the fact that Taliban will control the process of creating the government, is their desire to have domestic legitimacy. You have to realize that the Taliban are not a popular movement. They are becoming more popular. I believe they are, given that they are maintaining law and order and they are saying some of the right things. But it's still a large part of the population is incredibly skeptical of them, distrusting, fears reprisal, and remembers the context through which they conducted brutal war, killed civilians, and conducted many sort of crimes and against the population. So you have a very unconvinced population. And they will, if they have foresight, they will care to have the different constituencies of Afghanistan represented in the government to gain domestic legitimacy. If they fail to do that, form an inclusive government that would ensure international domestic legitimacy, then I'm afraid that we will have a resistance forming against them. The same way when in Born 1, Taliban were executed when the 2001, the new system was formed after the Taliban were toppled.
How would you like it if we bombed your house? Like if a foreign country was like, we're going to bomb your house because there's like, you know, there's some politicians living near your neighborhood. Do you think that would be good? 4 million people live in Kabul, you fucking psycho. Like civilians. Please. Like, do I have to fucking slap empathy into you? Like, is it that hard for you to comprehend? Like literally bombing New York City, dude.
we saw the Taliban insurgency kind of re-emerging, Taliban emerging as an insurgency. Now there are hints that there will be an insurgency formed. I mean, the former VP claimed that he's the head of, still the caretaker of the government. There are hints. I mean, Panjshir still is not has not surrendered to the Taliban, and some military reported. There are rumors that some military assets were moved there. So I mean, and those are still on hold, and it's going to depend on whether the Taliban will be able to bring in their oppositions into the government to neutralize any, preempt any possibility of resistance becoming popular. Even, I mean, some people may still call it resistance, but how inclusive the government will be is going to determine how popular the resistance will be. And international diplomacy is also important because it's going to determine who's willing to possibly help resistance or not.
Okay, very notable there. Lots of focus in that presser on trying to get people to stay in the country, to prevent a brain drain, to rebuild the nation. We'll just have to wait and see if the people of Afghanistan will heed that call. For now, Haroon Rahimi, great to get your analysis and your thoughts. Thank you very much indeed. Now, the NATO Secretary-General has called on the Taliban to facilitate the departure of all those who want to leave the country. Jens Stoltenberg also blamed the Afghan forces for what's happening in Kabul right now.
The Afghan political leadership failed to stand up to the Taliban and to achieve the peaceful solution that Afghans desperately wanted.
Desperately.
This failure of Afghan leadership led to the tragedy we are witnessing today.
Turkey and Greece fear being at the forefront of another refugee crisis as thousands of Afghans look to flee Taliban rule. Turkey is already building a wall along its border with Iran to stop people crossing illegally, while Greece has said it cannot become a gateway into the EU for Afghans. Greece was on the front line of...
Thank God Macron had a fucking spicy take on this, saying that we will not allow a surge of Afghan migrants to come in.
Europe's migration crisis in 2015, where nearly 1 million people fleeing conflict in Syria, Iraq and Afghanistan landed on its islands. The EU is calling for Europe to create humanitarian corridors for Afghan refugees. Jonah Hull reports from London.
For the moment, of course, the focus is on...
Bro, look, this is the most London fucking photo, dude. You didn't even need to put London up there, dude. Look at this. I mean, obviously, it's London behind him with, like, notable, the fucking Ferris wheel and shit. But, like, look how rainy and gray it is, dude.
Getting foreign nationals out of Afghanistan along with Afghan support staff. Some countries in Europe are going further. The Germans are adding human rights activists, lawyers, other people deemed to be at risk from the Taliban to their list of evacuees. The British government is later due to announce details of an emergency resettlement scheme for those most in need, focused its thought on women and girls in Afghanistan. But not all countries are going to be quite so willing and eager to help. The Greeks have already said this morning they are not willing, again, to be a gateway country for refugees making their way from Turkey across the water and into Europe. Austria, for instance, as we speak, is still continuing with deportation plans for failed Afghan asylum seekers back to Afghanistan as a means of deterrence for new arrivals, and doing so with the support of 90% of the Austrian public. So it's all very well for people like the French President Emmanuel Macron to stand up as he did on Monday and call for a joined-up European approach to ensure the safe passage of people coming if they want to come. But this is an incredibly thorny issue in Europe. It's led to the downfall of governments in recent years. It's spawned right-wing movements in almost every country. Governments, I think, will certainly be on their guard, if not all of them actively preparing to accommodate what may soon be coming their way.
There are huge parts of Afghanistan where the Taliban enjoy support from certain ethnic groups. The Torkham border crossing with Pakistan is one such place. It has now reopened, and there's no rush of people trying to flee, as Kamal Haider explains.
The main border crossing between Afghanistan and Pakistan at Torkham is now open for business. Trucks have been traveling in both directions. There were apprehensions that as the Taliban advance across the country, tens of thousands of refugees will pour across this border into Pakistan. But the ground reality is very different. people living close to the Pakistani border, all the way from Helmand province to Nuristan up in the north, are mostly Pushtun tribes. They, of course, welcome the Taliban. They have seen the Taliban rule in the past. And what we saw at this border crossing, that instead of tens of thousands of Afghans coming across the border, we saw hundreds of Afghans eager to cross that border and go back to their country. Most of the people that we spoke to over here are elated and jubilant with the fact that the Taliban are back in power. They, on the other hand, do not agree with the international community, and they see a ray of hope for a lasting Afghan settlement.
We welcome the Taliban back in Afghanistan, as they are the true heroes of the country, and none other than them can bring a lasting peace to this war-torn country destroyed by many.
Afghanistan is in ruins from the last 40 years. Firstly, we were made homeless by Russians and then the Americans, but thank God, finally we've got freedom from their invasions. We trust the Taliban and hope they will bring peace, stability and progress to this country.
But while the situation on the borders was now returning back to normal, there were frantic diplomatic efforts to try to put the Afghan leaders on the same table with the Taliban. The former foreign minister...
That dude is so white, though. Yeah, dude. There are, like, super fucking white Afghan people. I didn't know. I don't know if you knew that or not, but yeah.
Of Afghanistan.
It's an incredibly diverse, multi-ethnic fucking environment, dude.
Salahuddin Rabbani is in Pakistan, along with Yunus Qanuni, the head of the Afghan parliament, and also Ustad Mohakkik is amongst that group. He represents the minority Hazara community. What Pakistan has been telling the Afghan Taliban is that there should be an inclusive government, which should include all the ethnic groups of Afghanistan. Therefore, it offers a ray of hope for the first time in 2 decades for a lasting peaceful settlement to the Afghan conflict. What the Pakistanis have been saying to the Taliban is that it has to be an inclusive government. The Taliban have also announced an amnesty and said that there will be no retribution even for those people who've been working with the Americans.
Well, girls in the western Afghan city of Herat have attended school just days after the Taliban takeover. The armed group says it will ensure inclusiveness for women despite its strict guidelines on how they should dress. The United Nations is urging the Taliban to keep its promises.
One white guy equals multi-ethnic? You think there's only one white Afghani, dude? Like, there's only one white guy in Afghanistan? Like... Or if you don't know what you're talking about, like northern Afghanistan and southern Afghanistan are like entirely different countries. I wish like I wish you at least knew like what you were talking about. You just half the time chatters are just like talking shit without any fucking prior knowledge. There's that famous girl with the green eyes, the photo. I'm sure you guys have seen it. Anyway.